Part 4 of our series on SEO fundamentals and best practices is about image optimization and other on-page best practices. We're going to look at image optimization, body copy, readability, page freshness, and some other on-page factors. First thing I want to start with is image optimization with a discussion of alt text. Alt text serves as the anchor text if an image is hyperlinked. What this means is if your top level navigation, as with my old metaphor creation site, which is an oldie but a goodie, you can see the alt text says exactly what the images say. Contact, metaphor creations, alt website design and SEO services. This probably said services in text. Website design portfolio probably said portfolio. And these describe what those pages are in alternate text rather than the images. And you can see I just did this with images turned off. You can do that with something like the web developer toolbar. The web developer toolbar is an extension where you can turn off images and see what your alt text is and make sure that you have that alt text. It's really important when you have those images hyperlinked, your navigation is linked to your sub pages. It's important to have that labeled correctly. The keyword names in your actual image file names, if you have an image of something, label it. You don't want it to say DSC 94 number, etc., .jpg. When it's a big California squid, you want to describe it as the big California squid. And this helps for image search, it helps for the page, it gives relevance to the page. It's just a nice signal that we can send Google that, hey, this is the topic that the page is about. You would likely find the squid on a fishing page, I imagine, and probably not a basketball page. So it sends those relevant signals. Good idea for image optimization. The alt tags also help with Disability Act compliance. Section 508 is that compliance code, and you can test for this on their website. They have a link at try.powermapper.com where you can check for the compliance of 508 and to make sure that you have your alt tags in order. Alt tags are just good best practices anyway, even if you're not always 508 compliant and gearing your site towards a disabled audience. It is best practice to have those alt tags and image names described in those images. So you can test your site, as I said, at try.powermapper.com, and that will tell you some of the things you may or may not be doing wrong according to the usability.gov guidelines. Another easy way to test those alt images is the toolbar that I mentioned, the web developer toolbar. You can see here that is the images tab on the toolbar for Firefox, and I disabled those images, and that's what allowed me to see the alt images on the Metaphor Creations website. So all you got to do is disable those images, and you can see what your alt text is. And remember that this is anchor text when you use it for your navigation. So those alt text tags can be very important, mainly for your internal navigation. Another area I wanted to touch on just really briefly is the Open Graph metadata. So these handful of tags, you can look these up on ogp.me, are very useful for sharing in social media and putting structured data around your content and around your website. This is kind of the newer meta tags, and you can use these in a variety of ways that are beyond the scope of conversation for today, but definitely check out that Open Graph metadata, the ogp.me, and look at some of the ways that you can structure your data based on the verticals that you're in, because there's some good opportunities there and certainly a best practice to check out. So the idea of block level analysis is not really a best practice per se, but it's something that's important to understand. It's the manner that search engines break up a website into the different areas, the content areas where the body text is, the navigation, the title, the footer, the advertising. And in order to determine the relevance of a web page, they strip out the things like the navigation and the footer, or put less weight on those, maybe not strip those out. And they look mainly at the body text for that relevance. What is the site about? What are people writing about? What's the content associated with this page and with this domain? You can read more about this idea of block level analysis at research.microsoft.com with the URL there listed below. But it's an important concept to understand that basically your navigation and some of the other content, the footer, the advertising, may be seen not necessarily as duplicate content, but it has a little bit less weight than the content located within the body, the links located within the body, etc. Important concept to know. So when we talk about body copy, this is between the body HTML tag. So you start nearly every HTML document with HTML and body tags, and you end with those same tags. It helps the search engines to determine the relevance, as I mentioned, what's on that page. This is a snippet from our MiamiFishing.com page that tells about us, about our attitudes, about our fishing style, about our love of travel, etc. And you can see the content keywords. I pulled this from Google Webmaster Tools, and this is the type of keywords that they're seeing on our site, which are all obviously fishing related. We have good context, we have good relevance with our content keywords here, and that's what we're looking for with what we write in our body copy. So best practices here: 150, 200 words minimum, up to 1,000, 2,000 words on a page can do very well and keep people on your site for a significant amount of time and really improve that user engagement. If you write an article that's 2,000 words and you really keep people reading them, it takes a significant amount of time to read that, and the engagement level on your site is high. In order to keep somebody's attention for that long, though, that article better be very authoritative and topical to what they're looking for. You're not going to dupe somebody with just some third grade level blog content that you bought off Craigslist for $5. It needs to be real content that people want to read. The next concept with regards to body copy that I want to cover is keyword proximity. And this is just the idea that it's important to use your keywords early in the content, early in the copy, to help Google classify it. You want to have your keywords towards the front of the article at least once, and then scattered throughout the article, obviously. But the surrounding synonyms and terms are going to be probably as important or more than keeping it at the front. But the idea that you need to have the keywords at the front is called and identified as keyword proximity. The keyword proximity to the front of the article. Does this have a huge significant effect? Not really, but it's an important concept to address because people do discuss it with regards to SEO. What I think would be more important is the synonymous phrases and the language associated with what you're discussing. If you can take the main keyword phrase, if I could take any instance of Miami and fishing out of my website, and someone could still tell me what that website was about, then I've done a good job of describing the main keywords with the synonymous language surrounding those two words. If I were to do something like marketing, I could test this with thesaurus, and you can see the related words to marketing: distribution, administration, circulating, economics, business. These aren't necessarily directly related to marketing, but they're in that broader spectrum of things that people discuss and talk about and write about when they have the core term of marketing in mind. So check out the visual thesaurus. Nice helpful tool when you're doing your SEO copywriting. Another excellent tool when you're doing your copywriting is Readability-Score. This shows the grade level for your writing. It shows you the character count, the syllable count, word count, etc. Lots of interesting just little tidbits here on the way that people read your content and the grade level that it's geared toward. If you're selling something to a very educated audience, you want to make sure that you're using very educated language. So you can kind of gauge that here and make sure that you're not speaking over or under your audience, and that you're using natural language and just making strategic use of those keywords. Certainly don't be stuffing those keywords in there. You want to have those keywords in mind, and then you want to write your copy around that synonymous language. So the amount of text per page for your body copy, again, this is debatable here. I would say personally at least 1 to 2 paragraphs of text minimum. That's roughly 250 to 500 words. That's a good benchmark. Sometimes people will do 100 or less. If you got to write thousands of pages, it's easier to write 100 words, certainly. There's no absolute rule for this, but it should be enough text to entice the user to stay for a while, to have that reader come and read something of value and stay on that page. If they just come to the page and see a paragraph of text that doesn't mean anything, then they're going to bounce out and you're going to lose those rankings to a search engine filter at some point. Text adjacent to links is another important concept. The surrounding language around your outbound links in that body copy, in that body area of your site, are going to have a little bit more impact than links probably in the sidebar or in the footer. The links in the footer are going to be worth a little bit less in terms of value, in terms of link value, than the ones in the body copy. You're going to be using that writing with semantically related terms anyway in that body copy, and that's also going to help the understanding and the value of the outbound links and that anchor text. So the text adjacent to your links is going to have some impact on the relevance, the topical relevance and value of those links. Keyword proximity and the amount of text on the page. We talked about keyword proximity. The same concepts apply here. The quality of the copy counts as much as the quantity. It's important to put those keywords in a little bit earlier to be safe. If you do have thousands of words of content, keep that idea of keyword proximity in mind. For the most part, keyword proximity isn't that big of an issue unless you have a lot of content. You need to have it a little bit further up in the copy. Another best practice with regards to pagination, if you have a newspaper type of site or a magazine, sometimes pagination is a way that they are able to get more page views and therefore sell more advertising. This is an example from the Miami Herald, I believe. It's a 5-page article. You can see the first is just a paragraph of content, but they want Google to see this as one document rather than multiple documents because there's only 100 words on the page. They want Google to see all 500 words. And in order to do that, they just put in rel next, rel previous. So they have 5 pages, and each of these works with this rel next, rel previous to show the page as one page to Google, but as 5 pages to users. I'm not a big fan of this setup, but if you are trying to get those extra page views and you have a paginated site, this is one way that you can do that. So you can see the multiple page views can add more advertising views. You're going to have more impression on your advertising if you have multiple page views, but it can reduce the quality and increase the bounce rate. People, I know personally, I hate pagination when I have to click on 5 different links in order to see the entire article. So it can be frustrating to users as well. Meta keywords, I touched on earlier, not really used as a ranking factor by Google anymore. It's still a best practice to have 7 to 10 keywords per page, maybe 2 to 3 that you really target with your phrases in the meta title and meta description. You pick from those 7 to 10. It can be helpful for internal search if you really stay after this, but it should be tailored to the content of the pages, and it should be mainly for your internal search usage rather than expecting any benefit from Google. Heading tags have also kind of went the way of the meta keyword. From my understanding, they are a best practice. It's good to use your keywords in there. It's a good way to format your content for users. You can use CSS to style it, but it was kind of abused as a signal with people stuffing those keywords in the H1 or using multiple H1s per page. So it doesn't really provide as much SEO value as it once did or have a lot more benefit than just the user formatting. It should be unique from the title tag. It's still a good practice to use. There may be some benefit. It's debatable and certainly is debated in SEO circles. But you should use only one H1 per page, and you should have H2, H3 up to, I believe, H6 or 7 or 8, and use those individually for your formatting. No more than one H1, and don't expect a lot of SEO benefit here. So another debate in SEO circles is how page freshness and page updates impacts a website. My take on this is that it's very specific to site types. If you're a news site or you have current topics or trends on your site, the date and the updated content is much more important. Now, if you're a plumber and you're just in a local area and you've had the same business for 20 years, probably not a lot of updates and trends that you need to have on your website. I'd say sometimes frequent updates could hurt a page's ranking. If you're moving URLs, that's when it could really hurt your rankings. If you're changing things all the time and you move your URLs and you're creating duplicate content, you can potentially hurt your site. Just page freshness alone, there's never really any detriment. But if you're adding duplicate content for the sake of being fresh, those types of things could potentially hurt your rankings or hurt your website as a whole. Frequently updated sites are crawled more often. You know, if you have your homepage and you're changing it and your last modified date on that is the same day, that's picked up by the search engines. They register that, they show that. News pages definitely benefit from updating more frequently, but again, it's not more important than duplicate content. Don't just try to update your site for the sake of updating it. Not every site needs to be updated all the time. With our fishing site, we update maybe once a month. We do some updates, we do some phishing reports, that sort of thing. But it doesn't have to be every day or all the time. And that keeps Google coming through and fresh. Now, if you're a news site or a journal or something like that, obviously it's different. And that's because dates are used directly in the Google search results. You can see here with one of the searches I did on just SEO and CSS. The first one doesn't have a date. One has a date of 2008 and one has a date of 2005. So if your content is kind of timeless and it's been there for a long time, it's sometimes better to leave that date off of it because you may or may not want to click on an article from 2005. But there are other times when it is good to have that fresh date in there. If you're talking about a timely topic and somebody searching for the news, they want to see that the date is very fresh and new. Now, again, if you're a plumber in Miami or San Francisco or wherever, your content probably doesn't update all that often. So you need to know the difference between time-sensitive information and less time-sensitive information. Images are oftentimes not very time-sensitive. So I did the search for giant squid, and the elusive giant squid is found, and that was 1 day ago. And so that's fairly time-sensitive. The images of past squid that were caught is much less time sensitive. So news pages are going to benefit from frequently updated pages, and they may be crawled a little bit more often, but this isn't something that you need to consider for every site, and it's certainly not worth doing at the expense of duplicate content. You don't need to just take a news article, slap it on your site, and post it up just because you think you need your site to be fresh. Duplicate content can hurt you more than the benefit of freshness. So if you are doing that, you need to uniquely rewrite the articles and cite the source and just kind of talk about whatever it is. It's okay to rewrite an article and discuss it as news, but you can't just copy and paste and have that duplicate news, because that will ultimately be picked up as duplicate content and do some detriment to your website. So there are some both positive and negative signals surrounding the idea of page updates and freshness. Most of the negative impact is around duplicate content and just copy and pasting. The other potentially negative signal that you can send is if timely content is a little bit outdated. In this case, you can see the gross domestic product is listed at 2010. We're in 2014. This is a bad signal both to users and to search engines. Something else, and another example of this might be an outdated copyright. It's just a bad signal, a negative signal. You're not going to get penalized. So there's not going to be a huge penalty or a filter, but it's a negative signal to send to Google. And you want to take all opportunities to send positive signals of relevance and timeliness, certainly. Another area I just want to touch on very briefly is internal linking. So internal linking inbound throughout your site. If I say internal linking inbound, that means within my site. Top category pages are going to be some of the most important, and it's important to have an architecture that's generally deeper. A flat architecture meaning only one subcategory or no category pages and just straight flat, being like miamifishing.com/Atlantic sailfish rather than miamifishing.com/whatwecatch/Atlantic sailfish. If we put everything in the root directory of our website, we're going to get a very flat architecture, and that's not what we want. We want a deep architecture that's well organized, and the new content that's published on our fishing reports page or our new products that are released on our e-commerce website, we want to make sure that those are linked from the home page. And this is a very important concept in distributing that link equity throughout the site and in getting those pages crawled quickly as they're released. So best practices for internal linking outbound, meaning my internal links on my site that I'm linking to someone else's website. There's no reason for a links page. Please don't do this. You can see this is a bad example here with select the link category on this site. They have a whole directory of all kinds of things people are probably swapping links with, and it's just not a good idea. So you want to consider your text to outbound link ratio. Generally, you want to have 100 words of content or 50 words of content to every outbound link. I say one link to every 100 words minimum. That's just a benchmark. Even 10 or 15 or 20 links is okay. But when you get into 100 links, this is very high, even for sitemaps. If you have a sitemap that's 100 links, 300, 400 links, you need to start breaking that into different sub-sitemaps. So try not to do more than 10, 15, 20 outbound links on a page. But again, just consider your text to outbound links ratio. So if you're doing a big resource guide and you have 2,000 or 5,000 words, it's safer to have that 40, 50, 100 outbound links in that a comprehensive type guide. But don't just list 100 links. You're just kind of sending just a small amount of page rank, and you don't want that many outbound links because some of them might not be that reputable, and you need to be vetting those outbound links as well. You do want to link to external authority sites. You saw in the 20 signals of an optimized page that we were linking to industry organizations. You can see with this one, which is a Forex currency type of site, that we're linking to the National Futures Association and some other external authority links. So you may want to link to 2 to 10 educational or .gov resources, and if they are questionable outbound links, if they aren't something that's authority, make sure you put a no follow on those when you are linking outbound. Spelling, grammar, reading level, these can be important, again, to your audience. If you're speaking to a very educated audience, it's important to have a higher reading level, and you can check that at readability score. There's no reason to have misspellings or grammar mistakes at this point. While that used to be a technique in the early 90s, let's say, Google does spell check and autocorrect at this point. So even if you do rank for a misspelling, it just makes you look bad. So no real value in trying to rank for misspellings or using bad grammar at this point. It turns into a negative credibility indicator, and again, it's just a negative signal that you can send the search engines, which you don't want to be doing. Bold and italics, this has been discussed as having SEO value before. There's not really any value here. It's valuable to people who skim. When people read the web fast, bold and italics might slow them down and catch their eye, but there's no real SEO value in bold and italics. Page accessibility for the search spiders. You need to make sure that the spiders can get through your page and that they get to all those pages, that they index that new fresh content when you release it. That's why you're linking it from the home page, as we mentioned. You want to be externalizing your JavaScript, meaning you're linking those from external files and calling those at the end of your page. That'll help with the accessibility and help with page speed, which we'll talk about in one of the future sessions here as well. And then no orphan pages. You don't want to have pages that aren't linked from your homepage or aren't linked from the sitemap, because the search engines will never find those if they're not linked from somewhere. You don't want to be serving cookies, and again, externalize that JavaScript and CSS for best practice accessibility. So in parts 1 through 4 of this section, we looked at all the page dimension optimization best practices for URLs, for title and meta descriptions, image optimization, body copy, readability. We covered page freshness, pagination, and some other on-page issues. And thank you for joining me for parts 1 through 4.